I'm Joyce Hornady. You might say accuracy is my business. I make bullets.
You are listening to the Hornady Podcast.
Thanks for joining us and enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Hornady Podcast. I'm your host, Seth Swerczek, and I've got a couple of marketeers across the table. Preston Lentfer, directly across from me. And in Jaden's corner, we've got Matt Ritchie. Guys, thanks for coming on the show.
He's a bigger person, but it doesn't fill the shoes quite as well.
Nope. They broke the mold after Jaden was made.
That's very true. But I know you guys are going to do good on the show. We've got kind of a podcast where we're going back to our core listener group, kind of back to our roots, if you will, where we're going to take a dive into a cartridge. And we've done a bunch of these, and some of our more popular episodes, like the 308 Winchester, the 30-06, for example.
708 did good.
243. We've really looked at some staple cartridges and kind of dived into the history and their use case and their military use and just kind of take an all-inclusive look. And we've done that with our own cartridges. Obviously, the 7PRC, 6.5 PRC, 300 PRC, the ARCs, you name it. But the one we want to do today is kind of a throwback. I'm going to call it old school, although in the realm of things, it's not that old school, and it's not dead by any means. It's still very, very popular, especially in the American West and in certain competitive circuits, and I'm talking about none other than 6.5 284, or the 6.5 284 Norma, as it would officially be called. And one of the reasons I call it a throwback is when we were up and coming in the long-range game, and when the ability to shoot and engage animals accurately at kind of non-traditional distances, the 6.5 284 was it. Think back to yourself, maybe, on the couch, the year is 2010, and you're watching an episode of Gunworks Long Range Pursuit, and they're on an antelope hunt or something. You know what they're shooting? 6.5 284. So you had Gunworks.
Full with Rotumbo.
Yeah, Gunworks, Best of the West. You had a few of these companies that were building these really precision hunting instruments that were really rocking that 6.5 284. Conversely, on the competitive side, F-class and bench rest, you had a strong foothold in that community of 6.5 284 shooters. One, back when he was competing in that circuit, Matt Ritchie. Matt, a lot of people running 6.5 284, because I know Hornady had a couple people on the team that were running it.
Let's set the stage. What years did you shoot international bench rest?
2015, 2016, late into 2016. But yeah, that was. There's still a few guys on our bench rest team that run 6.5 284s. But for me, it was just the easy button because it was Savage had their dual port target action in a bench rest stock ready to go, and yeah, it just out of the box. Shot really well right out the gate.
They chambered it in it too.
Yes,
right?
yeah. It came from Savage and 6.5 284 Norma. So
total easy button. And one of our former employees that competed with you shot a 6.5 284, and he was damn close to setting a 600-yard world record, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, it was tiny. 4 of those 5 shots were impossibly small.
Yeah.
So I would be real unhappy, though, if I didn't mention that Matt has trophies for the largest group. And in all reality, folks, I'm kidding. It actually stands for light gun. Best light gun group.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we always joke that it was largest.
Oh, because LG.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So.
Well, let's really dive into the 6.5 284, because going back, it was a really cool cartridge. It lived mainly in the wildcat space, and we'll cover all this. Then you had the non-traditional hunting crowd that really loved this cartridge, and for good reason, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about its match application. Talk about some of the things that aren't so desirable about a 6.5 284. And then at the end, we're going to talk about the Hornady product that this 6.5 284 actually inspired. So stick around to the end to find out about that. So 6.5 284, we have to go all the way back to the year of our Lord 1963.
So the 60s, groovy, man.
Groovy. There's a lot of cool stuff going on in the 60s in regard to cartridge design, 300 Win Mag, 7 Mag, and the 284 Winchester. You had Winchester with their Model 88 and their Model 100 autoloader. So you had
I love the Model 100. Have one in 308.
Classic.
If it was in 284, oh my. That would be great.
Yeah. So
but 308's everywhere, right?
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have the lever gun in the Model 88, and you have the autoloader Model 100. Now, my dad had a Winchester Model 88 in 284 Winchester, and it was pretty cool. And I always thought that round looked really neat because it was kind of short and fat, almost kind of short mag-esque.
Sure.
So in 1963, you have Winchester with this autoloader and lever gun combo. And at the time, in the early 60s, okay, if you want to increase performance, downrange performance, energy on target, flatten the trajectory, etc., what'd you have to do? Increase case capacity.
More powder.
Yep.
As Tim the Tool Man, no, he would say, he'd say more power. We're saying more powder.
Yeah, very similar. But that's what you did. You had to stuff more powder in there. So the 88 and the 100, they were set up to run on that 473 diameter case head.
Right. Standard bolt face.
Like your 308.
Yep, exactly like it.
So you can only make a cartridge so long and so big in diameter and still have that 473 bolt face.
And get it to feed,
Yeah.
right, in a short action.
Yep. So what Winchester do? They said, well, let's make that case a little fatter.
Let's start a trend.
And then, yeah, we'll be trendsetters. It was groovy. Everybody's doing it, man. And they left that case head at 473 diameter, but they increased the body of the case diameter. Now, that allowed them to put more powder in the case and still function in their lever gun and their autoloader. So it was kind of the best of all worlds. You have the 7mm projectile window, which at the time in the 60s would have went from 100, 110, maybe 120 grains, all the way up to 180. So you had 175. You had a huge variety of bullets, elk, deer, moose, antelope, you name it. You could do anything in North America with the 284.
And of course, my memory is the opposite of an elephant, so I don't know if we mentioned it or if you mentioned it. What you're referring to with the standard case head size and a larger body diameter is it's a rebated rim cartridge.
Yep.
You'll hear that term thrown around, and there's a few out there still.
Yep. Mainly from
couple of them
Weatherby.
are popular. 300 Rum comes to mind. That's a rebated rim,
Yeah.
just ever so slightly. 6.5 284. 284, that's a rebated rim cartridge.
Yep. And the Weatherby cartridges, the 6.5 Weatherby RPM. Yep. So when you rebate the rim, it does bring along some things. So if you have apples to apples, let's compare a 284 Winchester and say a 708. And let's say that you run them both at 60,000 pounds. So now you have the same pressure. Well, the diameter of that case is a little larger, and you're concentrating that larger fuel tank onto the same case head size. So it does very, very slightly increase your bolt thrust. Not super concerning, not a real major concern, but that's something that does happen. It does very slightly increase the bolt thrust. The other thing it does for us and anybody else that makes cartridge cases, generally, if you're going to rebate that rim, it's a second turning operation during the case head turning. So it adds a step, it adds time, and it adds a little bit of cost when you factor in your time and your tools to cut that rim down to final diameter in your final head turn process. So just from a manufacturing standpoint, it's a little bit of a hang up, which is why you probably don't see rebated rims more common now.
Yeah, and then I guess another thing to talk about is in a repeater of any kind.
Yeah, bolt gun.
You were running a 2-port.
Yeah.
You just drop the cartridge
single
in,
feed,
send it home with the bolt. There is some feeding things that you probably have to be top of mind and really engineer things perfectly in order to get absolute perfect feeding.
That's true.
Because your magazine box or whatever type of magazine that you have is going to be holding the body. However, the bolt has to touch the case head, which is smaller.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to get things absolutely right to make them feed 100%.
Yep. And we'll talk more about that in, kind of that people building rifle sim. That's a great point, Preston. If you don't have your cartridge presentation into the action spot on, your bolt could miss the case head, then hit the case body. And that is not a good, reliable way to feed a cartridge case.
It won't work.
No. So there is some potential downsides with the rebated rim, but at the time, it really solved the problem for Winchester. And the 284 Winchester, it didn't ever set the world on fire, but it was a very viable and useful cartridge case.
And I would argue that it did here lately. Maybe more so than it did back in the day.
Probably in 284 Winchester, there's spin-offs. One of them that comes to mind for me is the 284 Shahane, which is just the 284 Winchester with the proper chamber and throat geometry. Bill Elliott, if you're listening out there in Pennsylvania, I know he was a big 284 Shahane
I hope he's
fan.
listening.
I hope he is.
Yeah.
284 Shahane and other wildcat variants where people touched up those chambers, did it right.
Yeah. And I can't speak to F-Class. I've never shot F-Class, but there's enough people putting out content now that, I feel like I know a little bit about what's going on, but they used to run those in F-Class religiously.
Yep.
Seems like Lapua or Lapua, as however you want me to say it,
Lapua.
has halted production of 284 Winchester brass at the moment. So you see a lot of those guys are moving over to a 7.65 PRCW. So
Yep, that's very true. And the 284, a lot of those guys running 180 Burger hybrids, which as far as F-Class goes, that was kind of the standard. And you saw a lot of that, a lot of winners out there shooting that combo in the 284. So just like anything, tinker's going to tinker, hater's going to hate, gator's going to gate. 284 Winchester comes out, let's neck that baby down right down to 6.5.
they probably necked it up, necked it down all the way, like they do.
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah.
Like we do. And I was going to say, just off the top of my head, I know people with 22 284, 25 284, 6 284, 6.5 284. You know what I don't know any of? People that own a 284.
That is true.
That is true. So a lot of necking up and down in the wildcat scene. That's what people do. And the one that really caught on the most is the 6.5.
Yeah.
And what the 6.5 gives the shooter is bullet options that are a little bit lighter than the 7mm. So you're going to pick up some flatness of the trajectory, and you still have really efficient bullet shapes.
Well, at the time, I think you could argue that 7mm bullets weren't super, super efficient and sleek.
They were not. That's true.
Like what comes to mind is a 175 grain flat base bullet,
Spitzer.
right?
Yep.
Whereas in a 6.5, you probably had some boat tail bullets that maybe had an edge on BC, and they went faster.
In the late 70s, early 80s, we did have a 162 7mm with a rebated boat tail, oddly enough. So they were out there. But the 6.5 really gained the shooter bigger bullet variety. If you wanted to shoot the flat base, short ogive, screaming Mimi, hot, nasty speeds, you certainly could. And they had the 140 grain class bullets. Like you said, whether you're hunting or shooting for groups, bullet varieties were out there, and you still had a perfect propellant bed to use powders at the time. When you look at the 60s, 70s, 80s, you put H4831 in the cartridge case. That's what you do. If you have a Magnum or something that can handle kind of that medium slow propellant, H4831 was it. It was the gold standard. So the 6.5 284 just worked perfectly with H4831, and you had that big class of bullets to hunt, target, shoot, etc. And it was popular then, and like you said, Preston, probably more popular than the 284.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy that it took all the way until the late 90s of people doing their own thing for it to get standardized.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of, like, think about that.
Yeah.
That was a long time, probably the longest in history before something got standardized.
Yeah.
There's no better time to stock your reloading bench and light up your range with Hornady Get Loaded Plus. New this year, free bullets or free cases when you buy these select Hornady reloading tools. Plus, receive the free hit target impact indicator. Hornady Get Loaded Plus. Free bullets, free cases, free hit target impact indicator. Get loaded and light it up with Hornady Get Loaded Plus. Visit Hornady.com for further details.
Well, let's talk about the standardization, because this is where the rubber meets the road, and the listener might not fully understand how important this is, but to get something SAAMI approved and standardized, and approved or accepted by SAAMI is one thing, but the fact that the word standardized is key, so that this ammo made by XYZ manufacturer fits in this chamber cut by XYZ gun maker. Everything has to work together, and that is the point of SAAMI standardization. So Norma took the 6.5 284 to CIP, the European proof house, the European equivalent, if you will, of SAAMI. they also took it to SAAMI in the year 1999. And this is one of the things that is unfortunate about the 6.5 284 when you start looking at SAAMI standards. There are just some things that maybe aren't perfect.
Sure.
You know, it's 90% there.
People were all worried about Y2K and stuff.
Yeah,
They
Apple
couldn't get it right.
Yeah, Microsoft computers were going to crash.
We checked the phones at midnight that year. I remember that.
I
They
went
worked.
to bed at probably 10:30 and woke up and everything was fine.
Everything's fine.
I digress. So let's talk about those SAAMI standards because that's, like I said, where the rubber meets the road with the 6.5 284. And in my opinion, is one of the reasons it didn't gain like wholesale acceptance across every OEM gun builder, big box store brand, etc. So right out of the gate, let's talk pressure because that's what drives it, right? SAAMI, the max average pressure.
MAP, as we refer to it.
So if you have 10 shots, the average pressure of those 10 shots cannot exceed 58,000 pounds.
Womp.
Yeah. And so 58 is certainly not anemic, comparatively. No. However, modern cartridges of the time, when you look at like 6.5 Creedmoor, for example, well, that map is 62.5 or 63,000 pounds. Magnum cartridges, like our PRC line, those have a map of 65,000 pounds. So when you kind of chop it down a little bit to operate at a map of only 58,000 pounds, you really limit the velocity performance that the 6.5 284 was known for.
In factory
ammo. Yeah. The other thing, twist rate. Preach.
1 in 8.98.
Yeah.
Well, they translated from SIP.
Yeah.
And it's a 1 in 9 twist.
Yep. So
I don't think I've ever seen a 6.5 284 with a 1 in 9 twist, but that is the SAAMI standard.
Right.
Never owned one.
No. Yeah. Well, and there's no reason to own one now. I mean, unless you know what you're doing and you have, I'm only going to shoot this class of bullets and it's stable in a 1 in 9. But the bullets we all want to shoot, the viewer and the listener all want to shoot, long and sexy, baby. Big ogive, big boat tail, high BC, low drag bullets. You need the 8 twist to get that done. And unfortunately, for SAAMI standards, they went with a 1 in 9 twist. And that limits you to your bullet length. And, for Hornady, our 143 ELDX, our 140 ELD match, 147 ELD match, 153 A-tip, 135 A-tip, those need the 1 in 8. They really do. And so you limit yourself there, which is unfortunate. And the last thing, overall length. This is the big one.
Isn't it like 3.223 or something like that?
No, it'd be great if it was. But no.
It's sorry.
2.874 overall length.
We made dummies like that in tech. I don't know if you remember that. I can't tell you how many 6.5 284s I made that I wanted to fit into a short action. And it's like, where did the bullet go?
Yeah, why is it stuffed in there? So we know from modern cartridge design, if you have a really long bullet, don't shove it all the way into the case. Don't do that. If you can, you want the bearing surface boat tail junction to sit right even with the case mouth shoulder junction. Perfect. Plenty of neck tension. Bullet's going to go in there straight. Everything's perfect. You're not chewing up case capacity. But with the 6.5 284 with SAAMI standards, you're pushing a lot of bullet into that case, chewing up that powder capacity. So, again, we'll talk about the hand loading and what makes the 6.5 284 great, because it is a great cartridge. If you're talking factory ammo, though, here's an apples-to-apples comparison for you. 6.5 Creedmoor. Ever heard of it?
What is it?
Yeah, it's called a Creedmoor. Apparently, it's a fad, like jogging. Apparently, you just walk fast.
And then you spell it wrong. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. So the 6.5 man bun, as it were, the 6.5 Creedmoor. If you look at our factory ammo, we have a 140 grain ELD match bullet doing 2710 at the muzzle. Okay? Super efficient bullet. Doing 2710 out of a little Creedmoor. Well, if you jump up to the 6.5 284, there's a popular brand of ammo out there from a major manufacturer that loads 6.5 284 to SAAMI standards. And if you look at their options, it's a 140 grain bullet doing 2750. It's a slightly less efficient bullet than our 140 LD match, and it's doing 40 feet per second faster.
And it's probably has 10 more grains of powder doing it.
Yeah. So it doesn't pencil out for factory ammo, and that's unfortunate, but the cartridge doesn't die there because the 6.5 284 is the hand loader's dream. And I think this is where, you plug us in coming up in the industry, really, trying to learn as much as we can about long range shooting and how can we push our personal limits in hitting steel at different ranges. And you had the non-traditional distance hunting movement where people were trying to really bridge that gap between, 350 and maybe 500, 600 yards or something. And how can we do that? The 6.5 284 thrived in that environment. So for the hand loader, world's your oyster.
Yeah.
You can do anything with it.
I never could make it work in my head that it would work in a short action though.
I don't think it can.
Your target gun, that's a long action. Or it's a Savage, so it's both, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have one chambered up right now, also a long action.
Yep.
So that really opens the door immensely, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, for whatever reason, if they say it's a short action cartridge, I'd like it to be a short action cartridge. But what did you use for powders coming up, or what do you use now?
I've only ever ran H4350 in it.
That's it. Okay.
So I think the key here is two things. Number one, most people that were shooting this, whether that's F-class or in that hunting community, running long actions, or number two, you get your short action, obviously send it to a gunsmith, or Preston, we've done this on one of your actions, put that baby on the mill, get everything lined up, and you can notch your feed ramp to allow you to run slightly longer than the restrictive short action.
Get you about 2.950, but for me, it still wasn't enough.
Yep.
I thought that bullet was slammed in there a little bit too much, but H4350 is great. H4831 is great.
Mm-hmm.
I've mentioned, Retumbo has been used in the 6.5 284. It's hard to get
H1000
now. H1000. The
Reloader
Vitivori
26.
powders 165 seem to come up a lot in my search of what makes this thing tick. So anything from kind of medium slow to slow worked really well in it.
Yeah. So the one you're going to run probably a long action. Or now there's medium actions. At the time, there really wasn't options there, but you're going to want to run that thing with the proper throat. You have to make sure your reamer dimensions match what you want to run. With the proper throat, basically 2.95 to 3.1 inches. Somewhere in there, I think, is the sweet spot for the 6.5 284. You push those long bullets out of the case. There's magazines that will feed them and hold them. And then you've got an action that can handle it as well. Pair that up with the right throat geometry, and you've got yourself set off with a really good start just from external dimensions.
And I should mention, I didn't jot the number down. I can't remember it for the life of me, but the free bore, Sammi free bore, is quite long on it.
Yeah.
It's really nice to see.
Yeah, that's one thing that we, as a group here at Hornady, what we do as far as free bore length, you look at the Creedmoor, people used to be, I want, short free bore and get it close to rifling. Creedmoor's got 199 thousandths of free bore. That's quite a lot. And the 6 Creedmoor is 180. The only reason the 25 Creedmoor has 150 thou throat and not 200 is because Alpha had already made reamers and there was a lot of head stamp brass out there, and we just didn't want to upset the apple cart by running an appropriately lengthened throat. But give those bullets some breathing room, and as long as you hold the diameter tight, they're going to enter the rifling straight.
Yep.
So when you look at Best of the West, Gunworks, Red Rock rifles, I mean, there's a bunch of those companies that really made their money initially running 6.5 284s, and most of them were running full house charges of H1000 and Retumbo with a 140 class bullet seated out about 3 inches long.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you really can't do with that, because with that combination like we just talked about, you're looking at muzzle velocity somewhere between 2,900 and 3,000 feet per second.
That's no slouch.
What can't you do with that outside a dangerous game?
There you go.
And so
probably anything in North America except for maybe something with big sharp teeth and claws.
Yeah. When I was building,
could be done.
It certainly could.
Tyler Friel did it.
Bore Driver ELDX. Fast and easy to load, the polymer base seals the bore and engages the rifling while the post and pedals grip the bullet's boat tail. With its superior ballistic coefficients and reduced drag, the bore driver ELDX drives its 340 grain bullet to target with the energy and accuracy that turns shots into success. When you have one shot this muzzleloader season, make it count and use the best. Bore driver ELDX from Hornady.
When I was building my first custom rifle, my very first one, I debated long, way too long. I drug my feet choosing this way longer than I needed to.
Pulled a Judd.
Between 6.5 284, this would have been in 2015, something like that, 6.5 284 or 7 mag. And I eventually chose 7 mag, and I would have done the same things to both. Get the right action, get the right chamber and reamer dimensions, get the right twist rate so you can shoot the bullets you want, custom hand load, and my 7 mag was great. I really thought about going 6.5 284, and in hindsight, I probably would have been great. I would have been better off.
Probably better off.
Because I built the 7 mag thinking, oh, it's got to be up to elk and everything on down, when in reality, it was one elk hunt. I could have done way more antelope and deer hunting with the 6.5 284.
Yeah.
With the less recoil.
Either way is fine.
But, you know, think back to those days. Carbon fiber was just kind of on the edge. So a lot of guys running fluted steel barrels, those classic Manners or McMillan hunting stocks.
Saw a lot of radial brakes.
A lot of radial brakes.
That's before kind of like the little bastard from APA took off, you know?
Yeah.
There wasn't really side port brakes that weren't commonplace.
Yep, a lot of radial brakes, a lot of Night Force NXS rifle scopes, and the industry just hadn't caught up to the trend, and the 6.5 284 in those rifles really kind of started that. You needed good rangefinders, you needed good optics, and you know a lot of the optics companies weren't quite there yet. And then, man, phew, it fueled everything. Scopes, rangefinders, binoculars, etc. Rifle stocks, for that matter.
As Seth Swerczek would say, it was a rocket sled on rails.
It really was. So you have that going on in the hunter's world. And again, the hand loader's dream in a hunting cartridge. We talked about it a little bit, but for the F-class shooter and the bench rest guy, Sammi pressure, never heard of it. Yeah, she sounds hideous. So you guys could jump into this thing, juice it up to the gills, and you've got hot rod velocity. And brass was easy to get. It was, again, easier to get than straight 284. And people were out there winning matches with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of hovered around that 2950 for my target velocity with my bench rest loads, but I compensated with, we were running 30-inch barrels from Bartland. So,
yeah. Well, there's definitely, Sammi is there for a reason, and the pressure, although anemic, is a good guideline. But we saw a lot of this with the Creedmoor. We see a lot of it in everything where hand loaders just, they got to push the boundaries. And I have tested some 6.5 284 stuff that was like, my God, yeah. Are you going to have problems? No, but you shouldn't live at 68 to 70,000 pounds of pressure. And you wonder why you're blowing primer pockets out in 2 or 3 firings. Yep. But that's where it lived, and that's really where it thrived, was people getting that 2,900 to 3,000 feet per second, custom hand load. And again, for the hunting crowd and the F-class crowd, really kept this cartridge alive, in my opinion.
This cartridge sounds eerily familiar.
Yeah?
6.5 heavy high BC bullets at 2,950 to 3,000 feet per second.
That's really, when you look at our PRC line of cartridges, they all have something that they fixed. And if you look at the 6.5 PRC, the performance on paper is essentially identical to a custom-built, custom hand-loaded 6.5 284. And that is no accident.
Yep, really happy with 6.5 PRC. Came around. You have a true, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That bullet can be seated properly, and it's still going to fit in a 2.950 magazine.
Yep.
And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
It is. Now, to get that level of performance, though, they had the rebated rim, and they had a hand load juiced up to the gills. So to get that level of performance, we did have to go with a true Magnum cartridge case. This is 532 at the case head.
It looks great.
And that's, and so when we launched the 6.5 PRC, there was a lot of people in our comments What does this do that the 6.5 284 doesn't?
Fits in a short action.
Factory. You can go to a store and buy it. Yeah.
That's the big one.
Yeah.
And that was, that's really the point of the SAAMI standardization process. Like we mentioned, everything has to work together. Well, I can't go to the store and buy 6.5 284 ammo and get 3-inch overall length doing 29.50 at the muzzle. I can't buy that. And if I can, from a custom hand load boutique, I can't guarantee I go buy a factory rifle and it fits in that chamber.
Yeah.
So with the 6.5 PRC, we saw the level of performance that the 6.5 284 was known for, and it's fantastic performance for match application and for hunting. It's hard to beat for African Plains game and for the North American, bulk of what we hunt here, but you can't buy it. So the 6.5 PRC gives you that 2,900 to 3,000 feet per second performance. It gives you the true short action fit in 2.95. And you can buy it at the store. And you can buy any rifle, economical to custom, and you can buy any ammo. And it's all going to work together to give you this performance. And then you can still hand load for it.
Yep.
You can still increase the performance with a custom hand load.
Hand loaders are going to hand load. But yeah, we have the 1-in-8 twist, of course, with the 6.5 PRC. And I believe that one's 65,000 pounds of pressure as well.
It is, yeah.
Everything's right with it, as far as design goes.
Yeah. I think that when we launched the 6.5 PRC, we intended it was going to be a match first cartridge. Well, at the time, that's what PRS was doing. 3,200 feet per second, that's the limit. Okay, I'm going to get real close to that, and I'm going to do it with a really heavy 6.5 bullet because that's what people were chasing. 6.5s real fast. But as a corollary, that creates recoil, and then the pendulum swung the other way. Oh, I don't want the recoil, so now I'm going to go to 6mm. And so the 6.5 PRC, although originally kind of intended to fit that match application, it turned out to be the hunting cartridge.
Yeah, probably one of the most popular hunting cartridges out there. It's incredible.
Yeah.
I've heard stories of guys going on sheep hunts across the globe, running to some guys in the airport, just got done with the same hunt. 3 of them running 6.5 PRCs, one of them was running a Creedmoor.
Yeah.
Just lightweight, high efficient bullets. You can get the gun really light because it doesn't recoil terrible, hardly at all. Same as the 6.5 284, don't get me wrong, but 6.5 PRC, holy cow, what a hunting cartridge.
Yeah, it really turned out to be, and it really pays a lot of that to the 6.5 284 paving the way in that hunting scene. The 6.5 was never grossly popular in the U.S. just as a bullet diameter. And we fought internally. We didn't because we weren't here at the time. The Hornady team fought internally about doing a 6.5 Creedmoor in 6.5 because America's not a millimeter country. Can we really get people to buy in on a 6.5 millimeter? As it turns out, you sure as hell can.
Turns out you can. Yep.
And the 6.5 284 helped create that. It helped people understand that, okay, the bullet diameter, and the weight, I want energy on the animal. I want energy on target, but I got to hit the target too. So it's got to be accurate and it's got to have good aerodynamics. And with the custom hand-loaded 6.5 284, you get that. Yeah, it's simply fantastic. And the PRC, the modern evolution that fits into the SAAMI window more optimally. And that's really what it does. But that doesn't mean the 6.5 284 is dead yet because, Matt, you're still running one. Talk to me about your 6.5 284 setup, why you chose that setup, and what you use it for.
Well, so it's a Remington long-action standard bolt face that's been blueprinted. I think I did some horse trading with a guy that previously worked here for it. And
it originally was a 6mm Remington Ackley. I still have that barrel. So when fall gets here, I take the 6.5 284 barrel off and put that 6 Remington barrel back on, and that's my coyote gun. One of many of my coyote guns.
One of many.
But yeah, so the 6.5 284, I think Preston had the barrel. It's a Remage barrel. I traded him out of it, so we're always horse trading around here.
Yeah, peek behind the curtain. That goes on my gosh, this is like we should have a weekly swap meet.
There is a stock that I know of that you've owned, I've owned, he now owns that has literally been owned by about 6 people.
It's a great stock.
It's a hodgepodge of I think I traded Preston some propane, the 100-pound propane tanks for the barrel. Yeah.
Okay.
And then
He didn't need them and I needed them.
Hank Hill would be proud.
Yeah, the stock I got from Preston, the bottom metal and the mag I got from Preston, we just so it's a 6.5 284. I don't even remember
and I guess why did you do a 6.5 284?
Well, because I had the brass, I knew what load worked in it, and I wanted to shoot 153 A-tips out of it. And so,
what stock did you pick out?
It's a HS Precision
PS 134.
Sure.
Did you get that from Preston too?
135,
the lighter one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So sure that one, but
sand in color.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I just wanted to make a NRL Hunter gun that fit into the open heavy division. So
your goal was, I'm building an NRL Hunter gun. How do you do good at NRL Hunter? 153s, 153 A-tips. That's how.
Going just right, almost at 2,800 feet per second out of the barrel. I think I cut it down to 24, 25 inches. But yeah.
Hornady Security Mobilist Safes. Discover the ultimate solution for safeguarding your valuable equipment with Hornady Security Mobilist Safes. Offering an innovative modular design, Mobilist Safes can be easily transported and assembled piece by piece in any room. Featuring a full square lock interior organizing system that maximizes storage space with countless storage configurations. Elevate your security with Mobilist Safes from Hornady Security.
Well, it seems like there's NRL Hunter is just as trendy as PRS.
Sure it is.
And if you want us to talk more about NRL Hunter, we'd be happy to. I don't know if there's
you got to let us know.
Hear it,
yeah,
but
in the comments, let us know if you want more NRL Hunter specific talk because we do it.
I think originally there were some guys running a little bit more hot rod 6.5s, and then they kind of realized that I want to be able to see a little bit more. I want the recoil to be tame, so then it was 6.5s. Then the 25 came on the scene. However, you got to have kind of a longer barrel in order to make that work.
Yep.
Until we came out with factory ammunition, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah,
you don't have to make power factor with factory ammunition, I believe.
Yeah,
But Matt's running 153s out of HS bottom metal. He's got a nice little setup there. So he's got magazines and
what brand is the barrel?
Nice.
Some brand.
Some brand. Yeah, I don't know.
It might be NSS. I don't know.
And I'm coming up.
Northland Shooter Supply. It might be. Yeah, I don't know. I got it off of
you got it off Sniper Hide. Yeah. But it shoots. This thing shoots so well.
To quote Randy Luth, there's a lot of redneck garage logic going on building these guns here.
Yep. Yeah, it does happen. Yeah. You guys see the pretty ones. You don't see the ugly ones.
Yeah.
Well, this one, ugly as it may be, we
can show it, yes, but
also, listener, if you want to see Matt Ritchie's NRL Hunter setup, let us know. We'll get this 6.5 284 up here on the table.
Yeah.
Now, ask Matt how much it weighs.
16 pounds on the nose. 16. I was taking swivel sling studs out and extra little bolts out here and there.
MDT has that bolt knob for a Remington 700.
Yeah.
The big oversized bolt knob made of plastic. Had to take it off.
Get that out of here. Yeah. It is 16 pounds on the nose, verified by multiple scales.
Okay. So that's that's a game, and you're gaming it. But the 6.5 284 alive and well in the competitive circuit. In our bench rest team, we've still got guys running 6.5 284.
Yeah. And it seems like the trend in F-Class, and correct me if I'm wrong, F-Class guys, but it seems like the trend for the 1,000-yard F-Class is 7 millimeters or, you know. But maybe in 600 yard, I know a lot of guys are probably running 6-dasher, but maybe they're still running 6.5 284. I don't know.
Yeah.
Let us know.
Yeah. Well, the 6.5 284, again, a cartridge that it's kind of like the 280 Ackley. I've never owned a 280 Ackley. I've never owned a 6.5 284. I've often fantasized about building one, and then I get to the, what am I going to do with that? It's going to sit in my safe. I've got precision rifle stacked like cordwood. I can't use
just another one.
Yeah. So but I could buy a barrel, and I've got enough actions with guaranteed headspace that I want a 280 Ackley and I want a 6.5 284.
Do you own an action that doesn't have guaranteed headspace? Minus a 257 Bob.
My original 257 Roberts. My muzzle loader
Well, it doesn't count. That's a muzzleloader now.
Well, I built it on a Remington 700, blueprinted and all this thing. So that one does not. But other than that, no. I went wholesale custom.
Yeah, that's the way we roll here.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it will work with TL3 pre-fit barrels because that's what we all buy.
Yeah. I've jumped into the Aero Precision Solus quite a bit now as of recent. That's
an Origin pre-fit.
It's an Origin pre-fit thread tenon, so that's been great. And also our friends over at Stiller, that company now in the hands of Horizon and Casper Outdoors, they're building top quality actions. Then you throw in our buddies down in Oklahoma, Impact, baby. Those things, about as good as action as you're going to buy. And we have been blessed to
live in an awesome time.
We live in an awesome time. We have awesome friends.
Yeah.
All right. So before this devolves, we've really covered the 6.5 284 from the 284 up to current day. It's still viable, although not as popular as it used to be, largely because the 6.5 PRC gives you that same performance, but it gives you the ability, factory ammo, brass from all the major manufacturers, factory rifles. It's just much more of the easy button, kind of done what I would call the right way. But the 6.5 284, one of those cartridges that inspired me to get into building custom rifles and to really stretch the legs on the performance of the rifles that I had. And really, it did push me, that cartridge, I feel like it pushed me to really enhance my ability as a hunter. Because the people that were shooting 6.5 284 at the time, the 6.5 284s that were in the office, the distances that they could accurately engage animals, I was like, okay, I got to get to that level too. And it really inspired me to take a lifelong course of training, practice, hand loading, and building custom rifles to get there.
Yeah. And I would say if you're a hand loader and maybe a slight bit nostalgic, don't overlook it.
I would strongly encourage you, don't overlook it. And it could be easily overlooked. We did this wildcat series where we're talking about how to pick a wildcat and et cetera. In our first episode, we talked about how to select a cartridge. And there's a lot of people, me included, that, man, I really had a good thought, man, 6.5-06 Ackley improved. That, oh my gosh, that'll be crazy. Well, you can find yourself at a point where you're too long to fit in your standard long action, or you're not getting the level of performance that you think you should, simply because you're pushing bullets down in the case or something like that. So the 6.5 284, if you have a long action and you look for something different, man, that'd be my first stop.
Yeah. And there might be a little gap in between the end of your magazine and the tip of your bullet. So
okay.
what?
Yep. That's why that HS mag I got from you is there's a pretty good gap from the front of the bullet to
our
the
257 AIs we're making. Yep. There's going to be a gap, but if it's too long to fit into short action, it goes in a long action.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, it's certainly a cool cartridge. Got a lot of people into the sport. Helped a lot of companies gain prominence in kind of that non-traditional range hunting segment. And it's still a great cartridge. So be on the lookout for some more 6.5 284 stuff out there. I know that, like I said, 284 Winchester, practically non-existent. If you have one, you're probably buying 6.5 284 brass to neck up. Yep. So hopefully more brass manufacturers get behind it because, again, it's not dead. And I hope the listener also takes away, we didn't design the 6.5 PRC to make the 6.5 284 completely obsolete and erased from existence forever. We just wanted to be able to give the consumer the ability to buy that performance right off the shelf.
That's what we like to do.
That's what we like to
Make it accessible for everybody.
Guys, anything else about the 6.5 284 or anything else in general you want to address the listeners with before we close this thing out?
I got nothing.
Yep.
It's hot and humid here. Holy cow.
Yeah. Summer, we talk about this a lot, and I say this a lot, but I'm going to say it publicly so the listener can hear it. I think as a society, we've been duped into thinking summer is good simply because school's out for
Kids
the summer.
are not in school.
When you're a kid, I'm not in school, this is great, summer's awesome. Thumbs down. Not a big fan of the heat or humidity. I want 45-degree fall mornings.
This past weekend was 102 degrees for 3 days, blowing 40 miles an hour.
That's Nebraska. It's not for everyone.
Normally the wind, and don't get me wrong, you'll know when this podcast was recorded by us talking about this weather. some people are in for it now. Like we just had it. Some people are getting it right now. And it's like normally a breeze feels nice.
No.
But that was like I was in a freaking air fryer.
It was like somebody
was cooking me.
You know the scene in Austin Powers when he gets reanimated and they have like 18 hair dryers blowing on him and his chest hairs are going crazy? That's what it felt like being outside, except for instead of 103-degree hot air, it also had sand in it.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
It's been it's better now, but holy cow, is it humid.
We're looking forward to fall mornings.
Yeah, it's 70 degrees now, but it's like 108% humidity. It's so miserable outside.
Yeah, I took a big deep breath and got a drink of water. That's what it feels like.
Constantly hydrated.
Yeah. So I've got nothing else for you guys. The only thing I want to leave the listener with is you are an astute viewer. You'll notice using a pencil here. Normally when I got paper, I have a really nice Bic blue pen. Gone. Someone apprehended it. Very frustrating.
I don't know how astute our listeners are, but if they notice that, holy cow.
I mean our viewers, sorry.
Listeners, viewers. I didn't even catch that.
Yeah.
But yeah, impressive. Maybe you got to get a shirt for that.
Well, if there's a viewer out there that happens to be a Hornady employee that was in our studio and took that pen, please bring it back.
Holy divulging this episode. It's hot. Yeah,
it's
we're
all right.
Going crazy.
Guys, thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for talking about 6.5 284.
Hey,
Matt, keep burning it down.
Thanks for monologuing about it. That was fantastic. You do a great job.
Gee, thanks. All right, guys, let's get back to work.
Sounds good.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Hornady Podcast. I hope you learned something about the 6.5 284. It's something that we still use internally, like Matt with his precision rifle setup for the NRL Hunter. There's still a lot of people in the company that hand load for it in hunting rifles. Still a very viable, awesome option for the hand loader. We appreciate you listening. We'll catch you on the next one.